as we know it is about to end. What is awaiting us is a new era of peace, liberty, equality, and harmony. The dawn of the golden age as described in each and every source text. I have grown to fully trust Don, master of all masters. He may seem rude, clumsy, and silly from time to time, but he has earned my trust in the past 2.5 years when I suspiciously followed his every move. He is a genius, a 5D chess player, a man with a huge heart. There will be a relatively short bridge period between the two in which people can adjust to the new paradigm and its energies. I don't think there will be much chaos. Everything is ready to be implemented. A new banking system without interest, new ways to educate our children, a new medical system without poisonous, addictive chemicals, and so on and so forth. All we have to do is be patient, watch everything unfold, trust the plan, do whatever we can to help others wake up, and remain focused and ready to assist, ready to help create a beautiful new world. Some people will wake up faster than others, remain calm and in service to all. Or as Q once put it so beautifully, as long as you sleep, we will fight for you. Where we go one, we go all.
Okay, I'll try to stay in the picture here. Named Dale Little here in Romania. Shocking, isn't it, what you just saw? A lot of people don't have an idea of what they're getting into. I started out just talking about conspiracy theories in general, and that's still pretty much what I want to talk about. They're masters at playing mind games. And what to do, what you can do with this video right here that you just saw, you point out the errors in it. And just before this segment was another segment where they were talking about John F. K. and John Kennedy Sr. And they're trying to make a statement on a magazine. They're talking about time travel. They're talking about a magazine that was out, had, John Kennedy's name on it, and they were trying to tie it to John Jr. And they made the statement, well, it couldn't be John Jr. Or something to this effect. I don't remember the exact quote, but then they said, oh, well, once Senior is dead, then Junior is no longer a junior. And I'm sure a lot of people said, wow, I never thought about that. But that's absolutely not true. Junior is still Junior. That's part of his name from then on, unless he changes his name. It's so ridiculous. But if you approach them about something like this, what they're going to say is, and it is true, there's so many offshoots that come in under Q, and they say, well, we can't police all these. But yet they'll use those same videos to put out to promote getting people involved in it. Well, if it's not something that's full of lies like this and deceit, why use that? And what they're saying is they're trying to, this is an effort about getting President Trump reelected. This does nothing to help the cause of President Trump, and I am a Trump supporter. Make no bones about that. I've never been called. I've been called a lot of things before. I've been called a lot of things I can't mention, but I've been called racist. I've been called fascist. I've been called bigoted. Everything on that the left will throw at you if you disagree with them on anything. The problem is that you get the same treatment from this side. And I've actually been called a leftist because I began to expose some of this stuff. Like I say, they're a master at mind games. They hook you on a little bit, and they just like you remember Satan when in the Garden of Eden, he began to cast doubt on what God said, and that's kind of where these conspiracy theories, not just this one, but where these conspiracy theories begin at, and begin to pull people in. They begin to ask questions, and with an assumed answer that they're looking for. And then they have just an endless volume of information they want you to look through and read. Very few people are going to read all that stuff. And there's no reason to, because if you just pick out a few points in it and let the Holy Spirit guide you if you're a Christian. And that's my biggest problem with this, is drawing so many Christians into it. If you begin to look deeply in just one subject matter and you catch that, you prove it wrong, then again they'll come back and say, well, Q is about more than just this. So basically just admitting that they can't back that claim up, but that's okay. Q's about a higher purpose. And so with most of the theories like this, the same. Now, they're talking about these mass arrests that's supposed to happen. They've been talking about it for some time. Listen, I came across that conspiracy theory 10, 15 years, maybe 20 years ago on the internet, before we had Facebook, just had email. And I was looking into some different sites, and I saw the same concept back then. It's just a different, and that's what these things do. They keep resurfacing every once in a while, and they just keep coming back under different guise. But that one that I first saw, the concept was that we were put here by space aliens, and as an experiment to see how we could govern. And so things have gotten so bad, and there's so much wickedness going on that these super intelligent beings that put us here are coming back to set things straight, and there's going to be mass arrest all around the world. And that's what you're hearing now, about these mass arrests that's going to take place. I wish it were true, but all this stuff's going to be straightened out when Jesus Christ comes back. Should we continue to fight against evil? Yes. I'm not saying we shouldn't. But it's just not going to happen. And I'm not going to say that we can't still have revival. I think we can. I think God's doing a cleansing right now. But we're still human beings. And even that, because of what the Bible says, and I believe the Word of God, that before the coming back of Jesus Christ, things are going to be as in the days of Noah. Horrible wickedness. So we're not going to wipe out wickedness. We're not going to wipe out poverty. Jesus said you have the poor among you always. So if you want to call Jesus a liar, then, that's up to you. I'm not going to. Yeah, we do what we can to help the poor. But the idea that we can solve that problem, it's not going to happen. Crime is solving crime. I hear people talk about solving crime, the crime problem. It's never going to be solved. The best we can do is the best we can do. And they use play on words. And by the way, look up two things: sovereign citizens and posse comitatus, because a lot of those people are involved in this movement. And like I say, there's a lot of, when you come down from Q, I can't say Q is promoting this and this is what Q is saying, because they'll come back and say, well, there are a lot of offshoots, and what Q does, most of you are familiar with it much at all, and some of you don't know what I'm talking about. Everything comes down in codes. It's just you see a bunch of letters put together, and you've got to figure out. You're supposed to figure out what they stand for. And if you're a good conspiracy theorist, then you can come up with some good ones. And they are, like I say, they're a master at playing these mind games. And then when that don't happen the way it's supposed to, well, I just misinterpreted what they were saying. So I don't know how much is Q itself, and don't know how much of it is just offshoots. But if Q is worth anything, they should be getting some of these other groups that come out of it under control. It's not helping their cause. And there again, they always go back, well, there's a higher good in it, and we can't police all of them. Well, there again, I say, why do you use this material to help promote what you believe? Now, I just talked about here a while back, one thing is, and this goes back to the sovereign citizen movement that's been around for decades, that basically try to make themselves above the law or outside the law. They're law unto themselves. And there's different variations of that. Some don't go that far, some, different variations of it. But that's the basic, is that the United States in 1871 was bought by a corporation, basically, because we owed money, a lot of money to these different debtors. And so the original Constitution is trashed or defaced or hidden somewhere. Another one is put in its place. And we were put under a corporation. So we're no longer a democracy or a democratic republic is what we really are. We're not that. We're a corporation. And so our votes really have been useless all the years we've been voting, if you look at it that way, because the corporation always decides who the president's going to be. One of these threads that I looked at, a Twitter thread, and it said, well, you can go check it out right here. So I did. What I found was, and I don't have it in front of me, but you can look it up. It's the Act of 1871, which supposedly incorporated the United States. I looked it up. It created an incorporation for the state of, not the state of, but for Washington, D.C., District of Columbia. It made it into a corporation. Well, and it specifies right there in black and white, for municipal purposes only. So what does that mean? It's an incorporated municipality just like all the cities in the United States are. There's nothing there that says anything. Well, you just have to keep reading, and you read what they want you to read, and you disagree with them, and then they pull out more stuff for you to read. It's endless. And I'm just not going there. I've looked into it deep enough, and you should be able to tell. If there's some things wrong. Now, if you look into it, you won't be a part of it, that's up to you. But child of God, you need to use some discernment. And it all raised some questions with all the stuff that you're seeing. They're always asking questions, so you need to ask a lot of questions. Not of them necessarily, but go look at, investigate some of this stuff. As they say, question everything. Well, I say, question everything, question everybody, even those that say question everything, question them also. And so it just pains me to see so many of God's people getting caught up into this stuff. And right now, when God is trying to do a cleansing with this COVID-19 virus, did he start it? No. Could he stop it anytime he wanted to? Yes, he could. Which begs the question, why hasn't he? And as I said one time, I said, maybe we need to ask him. Child of God, why don't you do that? Why don't you ask him why? It's not cover for some mass arrests to be made. Not saying there won't be made, but we don't know what to happen. But they're trying to predict the future. All this is going to happen tomorrow, and this is going to happen next week. When the Bible says that no man knows what tomorrow brings. So you can believe God or you can believe, these people. We don't know. That goes right back to what Jesus talked about, the farmer that had so much goods. He said, I'm going to tear down, build bigger. And he said, we need to say, God willing, we'll do that. Because we don't know what tomorrow brings. And so does nobody, no one else does either. And so these people that claim they know what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen next week. And let me just say this and get out of here. I think I've given you enough to think about and to do a little research, a little further, a little deeper. I may be putting a few more things out, but this is not something I really wanted to get into because I don't have time for it. I'm here in Romania trying to do mission work with and reach some of the gypsy population here, and I use that term. Some people think it's a negative term, and some gypsies themselves thinks it's a negative term, and others are proud of their heritage as a gypsy. So I use that term because that's the term most people are familiar with. They're also called the Roma people, and a lot of them like to be called that. And then I've even been corrected on that, and that there's another name the Romanian government said that they're supposed to be officially called in official documents. I can't remember the term, but there's even controversy with that term. Some say it's depending on which language you trace it back to. One says it's a negative term, and others say no, it's not a negative term, and they'll show their evidence. So that's, like I say, for clarification purposes, and I use that term gypsy, but gypsy are the Roma people. And so I don't have time to try to sort all this stuff out, and that's the reason God can't get through to some of you, because you're too busy playing detective. You're looking here and you're looking there, trying to be the first one to figure this out or that out. Oh, I've got the answer, and we get puffed up about it. I've got the answer nobody else has. Look up the term esoteric, and you'll find it describes you if you're like that. And so I'll leave that with you. But I'm I don't know what kind of retribution or what I'm going to get from putting this out there. It's not going to be good. I know that. I'm all right with that. Because, like I say, this movement, they can be just as vicious as those on the left, the communist, the socialist, and those on that side. Neither one is good. Both can be just as vicious. You got to believe everything they say. If you're not all in, then you're either there's something wrong with you. You're just not woke up. You're not woke. They demean anybody that's not a part of it. You're just not. And it's a form of elitism that we see in the news media. And on the left, it's the same system. It's just different side. So I haven't told anybody to stay out or get out, but I'm telling you, you better use some caution. You better be careful of the mind games that are played, because they're masters at it. Most of these conspiracy theorists if the good ones, are very good at mind games, and they trip you up that way. And if you don't really look into it, if you're not really prayed up, and you're going to be drawn into it, to some stuff that you don't mean to be drawn into. Like I say, I'm convinced that segment that you just watched, this video, that not all what they call QAnons believe that. But there again, they won't deny it until you pin them down to it, and then they say, well, like I said, they'll say, once you back them into a corner, well, we're more than just those things, and we can't police everything. You could do a lot better. And like I say again, why use these type of videos and Twitter feeds and those things like that that promote a bunch of nonsense, and still use them to promote the Q? Surely you got something better than this stuff. If not, then yeah, that raises a lot of question about Q itself, and it's not helping to get votes for Donald Trump. Stuff like this, I don't think Donald Trump is into this. Maybe he needs to speak out, on the issue, because it is not. When you look at stuff like this, it is not helping his cause. Even though I will vote for him, the alternative is way, way worse, unless some of this stuff that you see, like right here, is part of Q. Then that don't leave a whole lot of choice. We need to be praying.